This is the Programming Throwdown, episode number 1.
All right, that sounds good. We should keep that. I like that.
All right, so why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, my name is Jason Gauchi, and I'm a software engineer, but by day, by night, work on emulators, work on like MAME with the MAME team, and the MES emulator, and different open source projects, and just overall general hacker.
All right, that's pretty good. I wouldn't.
What about you? What are you up to?
It's pretty modest sounding, but I know you do a lot more than that. Mine pales by comparison, man. I'm Patrick Wheeler, and coder by day, and general do house chores around the house at night.
Sleeper by night.
Yeah, I was digging in the dark tonight trying to fix my sprinklers. So.
Oh man, how did that go?
It worked. I finally got it done in the pitch black, spraying myself with reclaimed water. So.
Oh, nice.
But it's all fixed now.
Oh man, I raked my yard and it's there's nothing underneath. Like the rake, I just kept raking. When I was done, there's just dirt.
Oh, man.
So I'm in pretty.
Coding
rough
is
shape.
way more fun than digging in the dirt.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed.
Man. Good stuff. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started here. So do you have any news for us, Jason?
Yeah, let's see. So, yeah, I guess we have this news about this PS3 hacker guy getting back at Sony, and Sony going back and forth with him. George Hotz, GeoHot is his internet pseudonym, and he's one of a group. I guess he's teaming up with Fail Overflow, which is another hacker group, and together they were able to hack the PS3. And this is pretty cool for people who want to sort of run homebrew software, whether it's emulators or just nice little apps. You want to just take advantage of the PS3 hardware in a way that no one else has really thought of. This gives you that opportunity. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I saw a little bit about that. The way he did it, he was able to figure out the private key for that Sony was using to sign its executables.
Yeah, so the key is all based on these random number generator. But they found out diving through the assembly code that the random number generator was just returning 6. So
that's so random.
Yeah, so totally the encryption completely falls apart when the RNG is just returning 6 the whole time. And between figuring that out and some other hacks in hardware, they were able to completely unlock the PS3. They were able to get to the point where now they can write, or you at home can write signed apps for the PS3, and the PS3 hardware thinks that you're a professional developer, even though you're some kid in your basement.
So that must make Sony pretty scared, right? I mean, control of their platform now.
Yeah, I mean, Sony's lost that DRM that they were really trying to hold on to, and they'd prided themselves on being the only console that hadn't been hacked. So they're going and suing George Hotz, and they're also trying to shut down his website. It's gone so far, they actually commandeered the IP addresses of anyone who's been to his website and the username of anyone who's seen his YouTube video. So I mean, this is really starting to get into personal privacy.
That seems ridiculous.
I can't imagine that they can get away with stuff like that.
Yeah, visiting a website is now a crime.
Yeah, I mean, it's something straight out of 1984, right? They're going to start knocking on your door.
I'm not a lawyer, but that doesn't sound very good precedents to set.
No, definitely. I just hope that that they can appeal that, and then it can go further on in the courts and everything.
Is it too late though? If they already got all the IP addresses, and I mean, once you have that information, I guess the ISPs have to comply so they can figure out who those IP addresses really are. But
yeah, I don't know, like if you can appeal something like that, I'm assuming you can do it before they get the IP addresses.
Well, that's true. The judge orders, whoever to turn over the IP address, but they don't do it immediately. They probably have time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. There's this awesome video. Let me see if I can find it here. These Fail Overflow guys going into like explicit detail on what they, how they pulled off this hack and everything.
Is this a watch at your own peril video?
Yeah, this is the kind of video that if you watch, you might end up as part of some court case. So let's put that disclaimer out there.
You might need to opt out next time you go to the airport if you watch this video.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they might take naked pictures of you if you if you watch this video. But yeah, we'll put it on the blog, link to it with a disclaimer.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
What about you? You got any news today?
Oh man, so I saw today that Nokia is gonna, try to sell off or relicense their QT, and I guess this is as part of them switching from their own OS, the Symbian OS, I guess,
Yep.
to Windows 7, or at least have that emphasis. So as part of that, I guess they're trying to divest the QT stuff.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. Nokia's kind of in trouble, right? Because
Yeah.
they were doing so good. You know, they had such a huge market share originally because they didn't have any competition. Like once the smartphones started coming out, they were just really in trouble.
Well, this is interesting to me, from a technical standpoint, from the market, I guess not from the technical standpoint, from the market standpoint, though, that, and it's my understanding Nokia has a huge, market share in overseas. I know some people from Africa, and they were saying like all the phones there are Nokia, and they're mostly the, what do they call them? Feature phones, right? Not smartphones. So I don't,
Yep.
I guess it's a matter of pride for Nokia to say they have the best smartphone or a great smartphone. But it seems like you can make a pretty good living off of, dominating the non-smartphone market, which at this point is still bigger than the smartphone market.
Yeah, definitely. I think also another direction, another avenue that Nokia is trying to get into is the trying to cut into BlackBerry's market a little bit. They've been teaming with
Business.
Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft's really the only person out there who can compete with BlackBerry on the enterprise level, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, no one can sync with Outlook like Microsoft. You know what I mean?
I would hope.
So, yeah, yeah, maybe
At
not.
least at least Microsoft might be able to do it.
Yeah, potential is there.
Uh,
So if they team up, you know, they might be able to edge BlackBerry out, which is just another competitor for BlackBerry. BlackBerry's, I think, in some trouble.
I think competition's good, drives innovation at some level. So
Yeah, it's true. There's competition you know, I guess the consumer side with the iPhone and the versus the Android. And so, but really, BlackBerry's sort of in its own world, and
yeah.
corporations don't really have a choice right now.
So on that note, Friday iPad 2 is coming out. You gonna be in
Oh
line?
yeah, I'm thinking about it, but I'm just not sure. The Zune looks really good. It's kind of pricey though. You know, in the end,
Yeah.
most users out there, you know, don't need all that memory, you know, all that um
RAM? Speed?
what does it use? Does it use
Flash.
like Flash? Yeah,
Flash.
okay. Yeah, most people don't need that much Flash. I sure don't. I mean, my plan would be to put comics on there, and I could put just you know pretty much every I have every X-Men comic, and it's only like 4 gig. So
Uh,
and I don't need all that on the pad. So the Zune's looking pretty good, but at that price point, I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to stick with the iPad too. Might be in line when it comes out.
yeah, I think I'm probably gonna pass for now, but I think my dad's gonna get one, so that should be
Oh,
interesting.
really?
Yeah, my brother maybe too as well. So if they have them and are playing with them, I'll probably get envy and might show up with one shortly after.
Nice. Did either of them have a Mac, like a MacBook Pro or anything
No,
like that?
actually, interesting enough, nobody in my family has any MacBooks or Mac computers. We do almost all now have iPhones though.
Oh, okay. What about
So
iPods? Did you guys jump on the iPod thing?
no, no, had no interest in getting iPods.
Really?
Yeah, I mean the
Oh
iPod
man.
Touch, is really nice, but by the time I was interested enough to do that, I had an iPhone. So
Yeah, the iPod Touch came out a little bit too late. I think it
yeah,
actually didn't it come out after the iPhone or maybe like
I,
right around the
it
same
seems like
time?
it did. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, before that, I just had generic whatever, Sansa MP3 player.
Yeah.
It wasn't an Apple product.
So your dad isn't gonna go for the Zune, I guess.
No, not the Zoom. I don't know.
Oh, Zoom, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were saying Zoom, and I was just mishearing you. But okay, you
Yeah, I
were
don't
saying
know.
Zune, which is the Microsoft MP3 player.
Oh, is that what that is?
So now all our listeners are completely confused.
Yeah, everybody's just it's all over the
You can
place.
send emails care of Jason for confusing
Yeah,
you all.
so yeah, that's a good point. If you want to write hate mail, write it to P Wheeler. No, I'm just
Ah!
kidding.
Actually, you can send email. We have our email address, programmingthrowdown@gmail.com. They can
That's
send
right.
comments there. We
Yeah,
both check that.
we're both reading that, so
Yep.
definitely, you know, send us your comments, give us your feedback, tell us what languages you want, because we will learn just about anything, or at least
Oh, we
we'll
should
try
talk
to
about
learn
that.
anything.
Well, okay, hang on. One more news item I had. Facebook bought Beluga, and this is not terribly interesting in itself. Beluga is a group messaging app, I guess, that basically you send text messages to a Beluga number and the Beluga resends them out to people in your group. So it's a way like if, you and a group of friends go to a theme park, you can all keep in touch with each other over text messages and not have to pay to send it to four people, just to one number, and then that number will redistribute to everybody.
Oh, interesting.
So that's kind of interesting, and there's a couple other applications doing something similar. But then I saw some analysis where people are saying that they think Facebook's going to make a run at the SMS itself by every phone now having a Facebook application. If you can send SMS from within Facebook, that'll be data, not text messaging, and a lot of people will be happy to get rid of those expensive text messaging plans.
Oh, that is so, so good. That is fantastic news because SMS is just
It
ridiculous.
is a
They are just
ripoff.
making a killing off that.
Yeah. So that was the last bit of news I had. Okay, so now on to what you were talking about. So what is the purpose of this podcast, Jason? Why don't you tell us?
All right, let's take a shot at this. So, basically, what we want to do is throw down a new language every show. In this case, we're looking at making a show every couple weeks, and what we want to do is just take on a new language. We'll spend a couple of weeks beforehand learning it ourselves, and then we'll spend a couple weeks after, continuing what we've talked about and advancing on that. And the goal is just to learn new languages all the time, find out what languages are appropriate for what tasks, what are the pros and cons, all that good stuff. And to just share that knowledge with you guys out there and to also, give you guys some more tools for the toolbox when you guys are out there, doing engineering and coding things up.
Yeah, tools for the toolbox. That's I always like to think about it that way.
Yeah, yeah,
The right
definitely.
tool for the right job.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays languages have come so far, and there are some languages that are so high level, and so efficient, such as Java and Python. And there are other languages that have been extremely optimized with SSE and different compiler tools. So namely C and C++. That you have a wide array of opportunity as a programmer.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So, what languages right now, before we embark on this journey, what languages would you call yourself qualified to program in?
My favorite language has always been C++. That's what they taught us in school. In ninth grade or whatever. So been kind of sticking to that. But I'm also pretty familiar with C, like Java. I like Python a lot. I did a little bit of Lisp, and so I'm starting to get into Scheme a little bit just to understand it. But yeah, I'd say those are my favorites. What about you?
Yeah, mine are pretty similar. I actually started off learning, I guess, C++ in high school and college did Java. Um, there's some interesting stuff there, especially since even it hasn't been that long since I've been out of school, but Java's come kind of far even in just that little time as far as fixing a lot of the complaints about slowness. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Also do a little bit of Python. Done some kind of crazy stuff in I guess what is that LabVIEW and Visual Basic here and there. A little bit of C sharp.
Oh, nice.
And did a little iPhone programming, so that'd be Objective C.
Yep.
So that's pretty much, but mostly, I'd say 90% of my stuff's been in, C, C++.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those are, as a programmer out there, if you're a kid starting to get into programming, those are going to be your core languages that you'll always have to keep, coming back to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and in some places, I guess people tell me, it hasn't been my experience yet, but people tell me that there's places where Java is, the de facto standard. But I think learning C or C++ or Java, you can transition back and forth with a little bit of training, but not too much. The concepts are pretty similar.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then there are some languages like Go and Erlang, and Lisp and Prolog, which are just way off the charts, and you really have to, change the way you think and change your paradigm to get your hands around those languages.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a conversation about this with somebody at work talking about that, I had been doing C++ for a little while and really liked some of the, object-oriented stuff that we were doing in there. And then had to write some C code for a very low level processor, and was able to take a lot of this stuff I learned out of C++ and use it in C, even without, this doing classes. The stuff that you learn is applicable. And I try to
Yeah.
do the same with, Python, or, hopefully as part of this, getting into, like Haskell, OCaml, like you talked about, Lisp, Scheme, whatever, those kind of languages, and not even just writing code in them, but taking the lessons learned, the way of thinking, and applying that to my everyday coding.
Yeah, definitely. It always seems like every language has one or two things that it can teach you just about programming and about computation in general.
Yeah. Make you
And
feel a little
so,
bit smarter.
yeah, that's right. That's what we're doing. Our goal here is to make everybody out there feel a little smarter and a little better about, software engineering and make you feel good about yourself.
And challenge you to broaden your horizons,
That's right. That's right. Horizons will be broadened.
whether you like it or not. But hopefully you'll like it.
It could be against your will. It's possible that you have this playing in your car stereo and you're engaged in the highway and cannot turn it off. So we apologize. We pity you.
Pull
That's
over
okay.
now.
Yeah, it's not worth it. I know you have to get to work, but
And if you're still with us, despite all of that convincing persuasion,
that's right. So yeah, let's talk about the tool of the day.
all right.
Let's see. What would my tool of the day be
Do you have one?
today? Yeah, I'm just going through my programs
Or
here.
you're looking on your computer.
I guess I could talk about Comix with an X.
Comics with an X.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
So my tool of the day is Comix, Comix. And the way this works is it's a comic book reader. Oh, actually, if you search for comics,
It's the
you
third
get a bunch of
one now.
weird. Yeah, it goes under the title GTK Comic Book Viewer. But basically, the way it works is comics come in this format called CBZ, and they also have another format called CBR. And all it is just a zip file with a bunch of images in it, or in the CBR case, a RAR file. What this comics does is it opens the zip in memory, it loads all the pictures, and it provides this really slick interface for you to go through the comics. So you can hit spacebar and it'll go from frame to frame, like it kind of intelligently figures out the layout or guesses at the layout of the comic, and it'll let you navigate through and let you read the comics faster. It does also some sampling and things like that to make them a little sharper, make the images clearer. So I use it a
Nice.
lot. I like it.
So do you use this mostly on your computer at home, or on your phone, or?
Yeah, so I mainly use this on my MacBook when I travel. That's most of the time when I'm reading comics, I'm traveling, and I believe they have a version. If it's not comics, it'll be something else. But they have comic book readers for the iPad and for the iPhone too. So keep in mind if you're a big comic book fan and you subscribe to like digital comic books, those CBZ files and CBR files can be opened in a ton of different viewers, and some of them have some really smart capability like this comics one. So just keep your eyes out, and you can make your comic reading experience a little better.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I just never really got into comic book reading growing up. I don't know why.
Oh, really?
But I do on occasion like reading comic books.
See, I never got into it until I found out like the world beyond superhero comic books, Like I never really got into Spider-Man. I got into X-Men a little bit. I wasn't really into Batman. But then I started finding out about, I guess I'll say more modern ones like The Walking Dead and it's
300.
yeah, and Scrooge McDuck is a comic. It's actually like
No.
endorsed by Disney, but it's not like a little children's comic. It's actually kind of
Really?
yeah, it's kind of like has not I wouldn't say an adult theme because adult has sort of connotations there, but it deals with some kind of mature topics and the humor is sort of high concept.
Hmm.
It's really surprising for Disney.
So what you're saying is if I read it, I wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, it's kind of high concept, so it's no way of saying, I don't
I
know.
see your nose pointing high into the air, sir.
Yeah, that's right.
What are you reading there, sir? Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, only the finest. I'm sure the Dos Equis guy reads Scrooge McDuck,
Oh,
the most interesting man in the world.
okay. Interesting. I'll have to call and ask him.
Yeah, maybe we can get him on the show.
Oh, there you go.
I could see him, I don't drink, but when I do, I like Dos Equis. Am I Scrooge McDuck comics? It flows. It's
You should
got
be a
rhythm.
screenwriter. I don't know who would watch your shows, but they'd be funny.
So what about you, man? What's your tool of the day?
So you and I talked about this a little bit before, but I'm gonna have my tool of the day just for sheer interestingness of concept, be Bitcoin. So
Oh, nice.
Bitcoin, the reason part of it, I was just thinking about it again today as I saw that they released a Java version of it. But Bitcoin is a program that you run on your computer that's a peer-to-peer program for doing money transaction. So, eventually it's a new currency based on, I guess, cryptographic principles. I still haven't fully put my head around what it is yet, but a way of creating a finite supply of things, which, if you have a finite supply of things, can become money, I guess, or money can be whatever. And doing transactions, so a way of doing transactions in a peer-to-peer manner that's more easily authenticated in a non-centralized way. And it's a very interesting concept. And so part of the initial thing now is doing the computations to generate these Bitcoins. And if you get this Bitcoin client, not only can you do transactions, you can also be involved in essentially printing money or printing bit money.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, the whole if we look back at currency, in history or whatever, they always look for things that are hard to generate or hard to replace. So like the Greeks, I believe it was the Greeks or maybe the Romans used salt for currency.
that's where salary comes from.
Oh, I did not know that.
Salt. So salary was you're being paid
Man,
in salt.
busting out the verbal skills there. It's
Oh, that's
impressive.
it. I'm done. No more. That was the limit.
Oh man, that's your one time. No. They used salt, and then later on, I mean, even to this day, gold is used.
hmm
Money used to be actually backed by gold, and you could trade one for the other.
Well, I guess you can still at some level, right? I mean, you can't trade a dollar bill in and get the government to give you gold, but you could trade your dollar bill to somebody in exchange for some amount of gold.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
A
So
very,
gold is
very
still
small
used.
sliver of gold at this point, but
Yeah, that's right. Or you can trade in your watch to some guy in the mall who will give you a small amount of money for it.
yeah, trade in your $30,000 gold watch and he'll give you $20 for it.
Isn't that crazy, the we buy gold frenzy that there is out there?
Well, I mean, I guess the price has gone up so much, but the problem is that they're giving you, aside from the scamminess of some of the people, I mean, they're giving you the price for the raw material of gold in the item, not the workmanship, craftsmanship, intrinsic, or the, what is, it, I guess, extrinsic value or intrinsic, extrinsic value.
Extrinsic, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're not giving you anything for that. So the fact that it's a lovely crafted, gold chain necklace, they weigh it, see how much gold's in it, and that's what they're going to base their payment to you off of.
Yeah, that's interesting, because in the commercials they make it seem like all of these necklaces and rings are going to some foundry and getting melted down. Well, in practice, they're probably, just turning that around and reselling it.
That's true. They probably make more money that way.
Yeah, I think people probably feel more comfortable knowing that, grandma's brooch is getting melted down. So,
Then somebody else is going to be wearing it.
yeah, keep the facade going. And I don't know if it was you or someone else, someone was telling me that they actually take like the diamonds out. Like some people will turn in a ring with a diamond in it and they'll just pay them for the gold, but then they'll turn around and sell the diamond too.
Oh, no, that wasn't me. I know other, kind of, I guess, scams that work like that, right? You go to the flea market or go to some place, pawn shop, right? And you try to pawn something. And if the guy thinks you don't know what the value of the item is, he'll try to, basically give you as little as possible for it.
Yeah, yeah,
So you
definitely.
have a, original Monet picture, and he says, "Oh, this is a print. I give you $20 for it." And he turns around and sells it for 30,000.
Oh man, that is pretty shady.
I have no idea how much art sells for, so
I
that's
think
probably
30,000. That's how much every piece sells for.
that's how much I'd pay for it in modern art. But
That's right. That's right. We should have a board game of the
board game
day
of the day.
sometime.
Ooh, interesting, interesting.
The board game programming language or something.
Okay.
So tell me some more about Bitcoin. So basically, some computers, I guess, are calculating Bitcoins, but there's only so many of them. Eventually, you'll get to the point where no amount of programming will get you the next coin.
Right. The pool will be exhausted, and at that point, you will trade services if you want Bitcoin. Services are bits. or atoms. So it may be, for instance, you want to have web hosting, and you could exchange some of the bitcoins that you spent your time on your PC to make for web hosting on somebody else's computer, which they can use to turn around and trade for actual dollars to do something else with or whatever. I mean, at that point, it's just another currency. It's just how many people will actually accept it as payment and as a form of trade.
This kind of reminds me a little bit of, back when I used to do Top Coder, Google is intimately involved with Top Coder, and now they have their own called Google Code Jam. But they actually gave Gmail accounts, like some of the first Gmail accounts, to people who participated in a Top Coder Collegiate Challenge back in like 2003 or something like that, when Gmail was brand new. And at the time, people were selling their invites. Like if you could invite somebody else to Gmail, he would, give you a free tour of DC. It's like they had a whole list of things that you could buy for your Gmail account.
Yeah, I mean, anything can become currency, I guess. It's just how many people will accept it. And I guess the idea with Bitcoin is that it's a provable finite amount of things, and it's because of the peer-to-peer decentralized nature, it's very hard to scam or do fraudulent activities on. So it's kind of a mathematical proof of stability, I guess. So other
Oh,
people
interesting.
should be willing to trust it, as opposed to regardless of your political beliefs, what the government has decided to do in our country, which is just print more money. And so kind of breaking the fundamental assumption that at a derived level how much money there is by how much things cost. And then all of a sudden, if there's twice as much money in the world, your money is half as valuable.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's like,
Oversimplifying to a great extent
yeah,
macroeconomics.
they must publish, right, how many bills they print. Otherwise, there'd be no way to, keep track of inflation, right?
It gets beyond my grasp to think about things like that.
Yeah, me too.
It's very interesting. I love thinking about it, but it's outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah, there's like an economic podcast out there where they're explaining everything in detail, and we're just making it up. So
Yep. But hey, whatever. It sounds good to you. No, that's bad advice. That's bad advice.
So, the other thing about this Bitcoin is because it is peer to peer, and because it's free to join this network, it
Hmm.
could get very popular, which is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big failings of sort of early civilizations were, if each colony had its own, I know in the Roman times, each emperor had their own coin. And so none of them really carried, no pun intended, but carried their weight because they were constantly getting phased out by something else. So it'd be interesting to see if Bitcoin sort of survives the test of time and if it gets popular enough to, hit that critical mass where people will start trading real money for it.
Yeah, I got interested in it for a while, then kind of just thought maybe it was just a curiosity, and then I saw it pop up again today, and it's kind of like, ooh, I keep hearing this. Maybe I can get on the ground floor of something awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right, so for the programming language of the day, I guess for this first podcast, we decided to talk about C.
Yeah, definitely. C is an awesome language. It's a procedural language, which means that it's designed to go kind of one line at a time, as opposed to some of the other languages like Lisp, which is functional, in which case you don't necessarily know where you are at any given time. And with C, there's like a very specific main function, and you're calling other functions and things like that. But it's rather easy to sort of step through a program in C and see what's going on.
Right. I guess the other word for that sometimes imperative.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I guess it's kind of hard to talk about C because most of my other things are defined in terms of how they relate to C. So it's like defining the base thing. It's kind of
Yeah, it's like the dictionary definition for the must have the in it. I'm
yeah.
assuming.
I don't know. Or it's just not in the dictionary.
Yeah, it might not be. So C is, interestingly, a lot of C is written in C, and this is something that is a trend that you'll probably find as you listen to the shows, is that a lot of languages are written in themselves. And what that means is, they come up with very low level interfaces to to the language, usually built in a lower level language. So for example, C has functions like open and write, which are directly go down to kernel function calls, which end up working their way down to assembly. So C is built on these low-level assembly routines. But then also there is like fwrite, which is writing to a file, and fopen, which is opening a file. These functions are written in C. So someone has gone in and written a definition for fopen, which invokes the right kernel calls depending on your OS and things like that.
So, I mean, I guess the way that works, is that the first version's written purely in assembly, and then somebody is able to compile C to assembly and do that to a point where you can do everything you would need to do. And then I guess at that point you've bootstrapped, and then you can have a compiler entirely in the language which it's compiling.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So C, the whole or the vast majority of the Linux kernel is written in C, if not the entire thing.
Hmm.
Linus Torvalds is a huge C fan. He has this part on his blog where he just is tearing apart C++ and all these other
I
languages.
didn't know that.
Yeah, let's see if I can find it. Here, if I find it, um,
That's
well,
that's that's
I'll,
interesting. Hmm.
yeah, I'll send this to you and I'll link it to the forums.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people I know who, especially in the industry where we're at, that claim to write C++, and that just means that they have a .cpp file, but in reality, they're writing C code.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Which at some
Yeah,
level, I mean, C++ and C code are very, very close to each other. And in fact, I mean, it's perfectly valid to write C code in a C++ file. But I guess it's more of the style that we're talking about there, the way you kind of break things down, write classes, those kinds of things.
yeah, so C++, which we'll talk about in another episode, but adds sort of an object-oriented layer on top of C. But in fact, the very first C++ compiler is actually compiled down to C. So the first one written by Strausstrup or whatever was its output was a C file that you then compiled again.
Hmm. So
Um,
C would be then a very low level language, right? I mean,
Yeah, in fact, you can actually type assembly code straight, in line with your C code. So you could be writing some C code. You could be saying fopen to open this file, and then, load, int I equals 0. All these C things that you're used to seeing. But then all of a sudden, you can put ASM open parenthesis, and now you can put assembly code right there. Bam.
whoa,
And
that's pretty
so
hardcore, man.
yeah, I know. This is like emerald cooking here, where you just
Bam!
go right, bam, and the assembly
There's
shows
assembly
up.
right there.
Yeah, and if you look at the Quake 3 source code, which is, Quake 3 is open source now, you can actually see there's places, especially in the physics routines, where he, there's all this C code, and it gets to the point where he wants to do some math, like, say, figure out gravity's effect on everything in the game. And for those old processors, it all had to be done in assembly, and you'll just see a huge block of assembly code there.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I have done that before once or twice, put some assembly code, but I won't lie, it was for the most part looking up, needing to do this to kind of get the OS into a certain mode or do something kind of finicky, and I pretty much just copy and pasted.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The little bit of assembly I've done has been kind of the same, just looking up on the internet what to do, and I don't know. Does anybody really program in assembly nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, I did program assembly in college, working on like on DSP type things or the Motorola 6812 kind of CPUs, the old school stuff. I mean, you can write in assembly, and it works pretty good. I mean, for something that has really fast interrupts you need to be able to do, or a really low level processor that doesn't have a really good C compiler, or a C compiler
Oh, I
leaves a lot
see.
to be desired. I mean, you can get a big advantage writing in assembly. So yeah, there are still people that do it, but it's probably very minute at this point, I would say. Somebody will write in and say that's all they do and prove us wrong, but we welcome
Yeah, I
it.
mean, if you
Programming
use
throwdown at gmail.com.
That's right. If you use a lot of assembly at work, we'd like to hear from you and hear about kind of your experiences with it and what its applications are nowadays. And actually, I take that back. I did some assembly, but it was SSE. So I was writing SSE code for did some work on the Bullet physics engine. It's this open source physics engine. But again, it was like I just need to loop through these numbers and multiply these two arrays together. and so the code ended up not being very complicated.
Huh. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I guess people still do it for a lot of things. Yeah. It's one of those things. I guess it just falls out of the mainstream and people kind of forget about it.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, as time goes on, if C and C++ are going to go sort of the way of assembly.
Hmm.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, because I did SSE stuff, but I did it in C. They have C, I guess, bindings for it, or I don't know what the right term is there. But you can
Oh,
actually write
nice.
C code to do SSE. And I have done that before. But it's pretty close to assembly. I mean, it's nothing fancy. It's not much better than just the writing in assembly probably would be.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, other things about C. So
So I got this link you sent me. Yeah, I guess Linus Torvalds does have a big beef against C++.
I know. I I would hate to go up against him in a C competition.
Here you go. C++ is a horrible language. It's made more horrible by the fact that a lot of substandard programmers use it to the point where it's much easier to generate total and utter crap with it.
I
Um,
think that, this is a case of, I mean, Linus Torvalds is extremely gifted, right? But he did a lot of his stuff when C++ compilers were terrible. And I
mm,
think that, that technology's come a really long way. I kind of had this experience with Python where, in the beginning at Python, let's say 1 or whenever I was first looking at it, it was just extremely slow and it was every line was interpreted. You don't have Psycho, which is a just-in-time compiler for Python. That wasn't around then, and all that stuff. So I got really bad taste from all that. It was just extremely slow, and it had bugs. I got this bus error. I didn't know what that meant, and it really took going back years later and discovering the language again to get an appreciation for it. And I think that might be a little bit of what's going on here.
yeah, I mean, it's written pretty recently, 2007, so it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, when he wrote it, the compilers were definitely in a good state.
Yeah, so maybe it is a holder. I don't know. Maybe we'll get him on the show and we'll ask him.
Yeah, oh, that'd be sweet.
We can have wishful thinking here in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
episode one.
That doesn't sound, we should, yeah.
Gotta set our sights high.
That's right.
Shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll land upon the stars.
That's right. Swing for the fences.
Yep.
Or if you're being held up in an alley,
Did you
you
just use a
swing for
sports
the nuts.
analogy on a programming podcast? Fail.
Oh man, I never played baseball, so
I don't think I've ever even watched baseball.
really you've never seen a baseball game?
I mean, I saw it on TV once.
Oh yeah. I guess
It's just
oh
too
yeah.
boring. We're gonna get tons of hate. Now, let's
Oh
stop this.
no. Oh
All right,
man.
so this is interesting. Glancing over this Linus Torvalds thing, he has a point here that I've seen some stuff recently about that's kind of interesting, where he says that he says, quite frankly, even if the choice of C were to do nothing but keep the C++ programmers out, that in itself would be a huge reason to use C. And this is kind of interesting. I saw somebody else. Who was it? uh, we'll find it later, but somebody was writing and saying that one reason to use new programming languages like Scala or Clojure or some kind of fancy new thing is that if you write your applications in that language and you're a, I guess, small enough, agile enough company to be able to do these kinds of things, that if you write your application in those things, you're going to attract kind of the best programmers because the run-of-the-mill average programmers aren't going to go out there and learn these complicated functional programming languages. So if nothing else, the people who are going to apply to your job openings, who are going to want to work on your projects, are going to be people who are kind of the cream of the crop, who are out there trying to pursue these interesting and perhaps game-changing ideas. And so if kind of similar to Linus's point here, can we call him that? Should we call him Mr.
Sure.
Torvalds?
No, Linus is fine.
To his point here that it's interesting. You're kind of the theme of this podcast. Choosing your language kind of chooses who's gonna be attracted to working on it or working with you, and that has consequences, good and bad, at every choice.
Yeah, I mean, so continuing with that, the more programming languages you know and that you can sort of put on your resume and speak in an educated way about, the better you're going to do. Because if you find that one guy who Ada is his love and joy, And if you can talk intelligently about that, you might have an advantage.
Yeah, and you had a good point there. Put programming languages on your resume that you can talk intelligently about. That's a pet peeve of mine, people who put programming languages on their resume and they couldn't even write a hello world in that language. Don't do that.
Yep. No,
That
do
makes you
not.
look terrible.
In general, you don't want to put things on your resume that you're not really good in. Just because, if nothing else, let's just say you're this guy and you're just interviewing you. You're on the other side of the desk, and they just randomly pick at something, and it happens to be something you don't know. I mean, it's going to be devastating. So you want to
Yeah.
make sure that if someone throws a dart at your resume, it's going to land on something that you can speak about.
Yep. Yep. It's good stuff. Good stuff. I mean, you got anything more to say about C? There's
Let's
so
see.
much to say that it's almost hard to pick what to talk about.
Yeah, so well, let's talk a little bit about just the sort of different characteristics of C. So, C is very low level. It relies heavily on the compiler. So C doesn't have its own memory management. It doesn't have like a garbage collection or anything like that. You have to do all the mallocs and frees
Hmm.
yourself.
Hmm. And that's a
Um,
pro and a con.
yeah, it's a pro in the sense that, you're if you program something, you have a good idea of how much time and how much memory it's going to take. It can also be very consistent. You can allocate your memory up front versus something like if you've used MATLAB or Python, every time you do an operation, you might be allocating more memory. And that very next operation might be the one that allocates so much memory that your computer has to sort of reorganize, and that could take a very long time. In C, C puts you in the driver's seat. So when you're allocating and deallocating memory. You know when you're going to take a performance hit for doing something. You can watch your buffers, and if they start to get too full, you could decide when to make them larger, etc.
Yeah.
C really leaves you in your own hands there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess other languages try to address that, right? I mean, in Python, you can do stuff to try to make it allocate in advance, but ultimately that's not the way it's intended to be used. In C, it's
Right.
kind of the default way is to make it be used that way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But a lot of people mess it up. A lot of people forget to free stuff or, try to dereference, bad pointers and they get tripped up, in managing their memory correctly. And that's a dangerous thing because it can make your program crash.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the other thing, C does not give you a safety net. So in Java, if you have some array that's 10 elements and you try and access the 11th one, Java has a virtual machine. So Java has a sort of like a computer inside a computer, and we'll talk about this more later. But and the simulated computer on the inside will fail and will throw an error back. In C, you're talking straight to your hardware. So you're talking straight to your memory, to the processor, to any disks you have. And if you have an array of size 12 and you go for the 14th element, it's just going to pick whatever is there in that memory and return it. It'll probably be some crazy number. If you're expecting a number between 1 and 100, you might get 2 million.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it will let you do that.
the real danger isn't that though. I mean, that is dangerous. The danger is when it works most of the time, but then, the critical moment you're demoing for your boss or, worse, the customer, and all of a sudden that's the time that the way it's allocated happens to be that that memory is being used for something else. Or it's, used by the operating system or something. And it's instead of returning the value you've expected every other time, like let's say zero, now it does return something different because it isn't what you thought it was.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And these problems they start to show up in production. So, for example, let's say you have an array of 10,000 for let's say you're Amazon and you're categorizing books in C, and you gave space for, let's say 1 million books. But now you roll this out to the production environment and you surpass 1 million books or 1 million comments on books. Now you've overridden that array, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah,
When you go back to your simulated environment, you're never going to find that error because it depends on something that you can only experience in
in
large
production.
volume.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It also points out the importance of testing.
Yeah, definitely. So we
And
should actually, maybe the next show, our goal is to kind of do like a little explanation of language and then on the next show kind of do a little recap. maybe in the recap and kind of tool section, we'll talk about Valgrind and some of those other
Oh, that's
tools
a
that you
good
can
point.
use.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we probably should, maybe we should have done this before, but, probably should come up with kind of a format for everything. Like I was thinking about, we should also talk about libraries. So, for instance, C, libraries, a lot of people kind of call C, well, later programming languages kind of poke fun at C by saying these languages are batteries included. That's a Python saying, I guess, right? That,
Yep.
it comes with all of the other stuff you might need versus C doesn't. But there are a lot of libraries that you can pull from that give you a lot of powerful tools in C, and especially, I guess, C++, but a lot of libraries out there that give you functionality or reusability and help you build up that code base a lot faster than if you had to do everything from scratch. So it has good library support, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. C and C++, it seems like every program out there either has a C, C++ version or is solely C, C++, and then
Yeah.
has bindings for everything else.
But those aren't always straightforward. I mean, having used a number of libraries, they can range in difficulty from very easy to integrate to next to impossible to get working in your program.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
not a lot of consistency on that front.
No, and yeah, that's actually a good point. So let's talk a little bit about the different C standards. I don't know a lot about the history of it, but at this point, right now, there's basically two C standards. There's the, I guess we'll call it the Microsoft C standard, and then there's the, was it
ANCC?
C99?
Well, there's ANCC and then
No,
C99.
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm calling that the Microsoft one since they're the only ones that really stick to that one. But yeah, there's
Wait,
so
to
for
which one?
example, to ANCC, I
No, no, no,
suppose.
no, 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 no. NCC was what, I mean, that's what like GCC complied to, right? Before now, like C99 coming out, right? I mean, Microsoft kind of invented their own subset of ANCC that they complied with. And then they've gotten better over time to now they're actually pretty compliant, in my understanding.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking. Oh, yeah, I'm thinking of ANCC, I think.
That's what I was talking about. All
Hang
right, so
on.
keep going. Go to your original point, anyways.
Well, I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, so then there was C99, which I mean didn't change anything drastic, right? I mean it just kind of added support for some new data types and bigger numbers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, let me da.
All right. The other thing that if you hear people talking about C, there are a lot of bad things you can do in C. C gives you a lot of power, but with great power comes great responsibility. And
That's
uh,
right.
And so, they'll do things, they give you like macros, they give you all sorts of ability to, have pointers to functions and, have lists of functions that you can call and change what function does when. And I mean, it gives you all sorts of, we say crazy things, but in some cases, those are really necessary to be able to do those kind of non-standard, unexpected, hard to wrap your brain around functions. But in other cases, they can be used for, ossification or not that any of us would ever do this, but showing off. And so people will try to show off by using what are those called, the tertiary operators,
Yeah,
like the
right.
questions. And, if you've ever seen the obfuscated C contest, people can write, just completely unreadable C source code that's completely valid, complies with the standards, and compiles and is fast. But you could never read it,
Yeah, it's
much less
impossible.
change it.
So here's what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah, back to your
There is
point.
An yeah, it's fine. There's ANSI C and then there's C99, which
Hmm.
is I guess the newer one. And so Microsoft Visual Studio doesn't support C99. It only
Okay,
supports the ANSI C.
okay.
And this is a problem because like FFmpeg, for example, which is a video streaming library, is written in C99. So to use it in Visual Studio, you'd have to, just go through and hack the entire code base, and everywhere where you see something that isn't compliant, you have to go in and fix it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it'd be massive. So there are, two different standards, and the hope is that, all of the compilers will start to get to the point where they're supporting C99.
Yeah, the cross compiler, cross platform, that in C, C++, because you really are, compiling right down to machine code. It's a pro and a con, but the con is that you got to be very careful about what you're doing because the way one thing works on one platform could be completely different from the way it works on another.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So the difference between C and C++ from other languages like Python or Java is that, as we talked about earlier, they're talking directly to the machine. And so there's a and more specifically, they're talking directly to the operating system. So you have to use a compiler specific to your type of hardware and to your OS. So, in the case of Windows, you have some choices. You can use Visual C++, which is a Microsoft product. You could use GCC for Windows. It's called MinGW, which is a minimalist GNU for Windows, is what MinGW stands for. You can also use Intel. They have a compiler. On the Linux side,
There's a couple of others too, right? Less
uh,
popular now, but there's the Borland had one for a while, right? Borland
oh
C
yeah,
compiler.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, but sorry, go ahead. Not to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's cool.
I threw you off your
I'm pulling
cadence.
up. No, it's cool. I'm pulling up C compilers right now. Yeah, on Wikipedia you'll see there's a ton of them. Turbo C, remember that one?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day.
All right,
So,
and then on Linux.
oh yeah, on Linux there is, GCC is the heavy hitter on Linux. Just about everything is going to be built in that. ICC, which is the Intel compiler, or Intel C compiler, that's also on Linux. So the point of this is the programs that you create with C or C++ will be specific to that operating system and that hardware. So, in Java, for example, you can create a .class file, which is, your compiled source code, and run that on any machine. So I can compile some Java code on my machine and then go to another Linux machine or go to an ARM machine or go anywhere and run that code, and it'll run just fine. If you build an executable in C and then take it over to your Mac and try and run it, you're going to be in trouble. It's not going to know what to do with that.
You can do cross compilation though, right? I mean, on a Windows machine, you could tell your compiler to compile it for a Macintosh.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. So you can do that, but whichever you decide, it's going to be set to that. So you
Mhm.
can't compile something that'll work on several different architectures.
And the other thing to point out, I mean, I guess to us we kind of forget about it, but you don't have to have an operating system to be able to use C. I mean, there are many people writing, the operating system itself is written in C,
Yeah,
or C++
definitely.
for the most part. I mean, there are exceptions, but most of the serious ones, like you pointed out earlier, Linux, I mean, Windows is written in C, C++. So the operating system itself is written in those languages because it doesn't presume that there's an operating system running. I mean, it can. So if you write code compiled for Windows to do GUI stuff, for instance, it's going to assume there's an operating system there. But there's other
Right.
ways to write it where those assumptions aren't necessary and that you can have code that runs without an operating system.
Yeah, definitely. And so if you're wondering why this is, why in Java and Python, you can write your code and you can create the PYC files in Python or the class files in Java and just send those around across the internet and just know that they'll work on the other person's machine. That's because those people, so like Guido in the case of Python, or do you know who made Java?
Oh, I should.
Here, let's look it up.
Don't put me on the spot. You're ruining our street cred.
History. I guess James Gosling, Mike Sheridan, and
I
Patrick
mean, there's a couple
Naughton.
guys there who are kind of famous and have gone on to work on other languages as well. But I'm not as
Yeah,
up on that
that's
history
right.
as I should be. Shh, you were supposed to tell me we are going to talk about this before, so I could sound
We'll
smart.
cut it, we'll cut all this out.
Oh,
Actually,
okay,
we'll
okay.
say we'll say we'll cut it out and we won't.
Yeah, that's true. I'm lazy.
So these people have gone to painstaking time and effort into making sure that when you do, zero point 0.5 plus zero point 0.5 in Python, that it's going to give you 1.0 on every single machine. Or when you create an array, when you create a string, or when you try and access a GUI, when you try and create a GUI, that it works the same or as close to the same as it can in every OS. That's one of the nice things about Java is you can make a GUI and just know that it'll work on every computer. With C and C++, you're typically coding for your hardware and your OS.
True, True.
Yeah, there are some libraries that can sort of make things cross-platform, and maybe we should talk about some of
Yeah,
those.
we'll have to get to those. Definitely, definitely.
Yeah,
So
so
much
let's
to talk
see.
about, so little time.
Yeah, I don't know of any C ones. I use mostly C++ ones, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess
that's a
I'll
good
mention
point.
a couple. Agar is a C library for GUIs that is cross-platform,
What does that use? Like OpenGL on the back end, or is
right?
it? Do you know?
Yeah, it actually has several different backends, but I think OpenGL is one of them.
Okay.
Do you know any? Like you want to throw in one or two C libraries?
C, man, see, I'm gonna say something. It's gonna be C++, and then I'm gonna feel kind of bad. Um,
Yeah, it's so hard, right? Because it's hard
yeah,
to know.
I mean, a lot of the stuff I do for like low-level timing, doing analysis on my code and profiling type stuff, most of those are just C, just for the sake of they don't need to be C++, and that keeps them more compatible.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
there's a number of platform-specific libraries that are C. For instance, if you do coding on the TI DSPs, TI has a set of fixed point libraries that are in C
Ah, true.
because some of
That's
their
right.
DSPs don't have floating point support, or the floating point support is large or slow or slow.
Yeah, yeah. Another one is expat, which is a XML parsing library.
Are you just
That's
continuing to
in
show me
C.
up by telling me how many you can name and I can't name any?
Yeah, this is like name that. I guess. Well, was there a game show like that where it's like you have to keep going?
We should invent one,
Yeah, we'll invent our own game show. We'll write it in C. How
and
about
then we'll
that?
win.
That's right. And we'll have a memory overrun, so we'll
Oh, that's
win
something
even if
else we
we
should point
lost.
out, the security. There's a number of security problems with C and C++. Not inherent, but if you're not careful, for instance, you take input from the command line, somebody could give you a just absolutely gigantic string and cause I guess at that point, a buffer overflow.
Yep.
So we don't have time to get into that right now, but
Yeah, we could
things
do a
to
whole
watch out
show
for.
on all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you read in the news as we talked about at the beginning of the show, that guy who hacked the PS3 and whatever, and a lot of these hacks, these hardware hacks, what they're doing is C is such a low level that they're going in and adding electricity to the traces running between two chips, causing numbers to be bigger than they should be. And they're just waiting for someone for a flaw in the C program and for them to be able to get access to some block of memory that was generally restricted.
This is good stuff. So, I think call it here for our first episode. It's been pretty good, Jason.
Yeah, I think this has been great. I've had a lot of fun.
All right. Well, that's it for today. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. See you guys later. Hope you have fun programming in C.
Go out and learn something new.
Programming Throwdown is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 2.0 license. You're free to share, copy, distribute, transmit the work, to remix, adapt the work, but you must provide attribution to Patrick and I, and share alike in kind. The intro music is AXO by Binar Pilot.